Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of LPA Presents. I'm your host, Matthew D. Rhodes, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by not one, but two incredible authors. Returning to the podcast is the talented Armand Rosamilia, and making his debut appearance is the equally amazing Thomas Duffy, who recently co-wrote a novel with Armand. Today, our conversation will revolve around their most recent project. Now, I usually come prepared with a list of questions, but I thought it'd be more dynamic to dive into this discussion off the cuff. Let's explore and uncover more about their current endeavor. Without further ado, let's get started. So, how are you guys doing today?
Doing good, doing good.
Same. Very good.
You guys were working on a novel recently. Was it a thriller or?
A heist trilogy. We completed 3 books together, and the goal was to finish all 3 books before we released them, and then we rapid released them. So December 15th, January 15th, and February 15th. So to get all 3 of them out in a close proximity to one another, and to let everybody know that it's 3 books and this series is done. So and so the goal is that everybody will buy all 3 within a short window and hopefully love it.
What was the inspiration behind it?
Tom.
Yeah. So, I basically at one point, I think it was maybe towards the beginning of last year. We were both in kind of a weird slump, and at one point, I brought up how I wanted to write a heist novel. And then Armand's like, "Yeah, I want to write a heist novel. Let's just write it together." So the plan was we're going to write a novel. And we were going to start it around May, I believe it was, end of April, beginning of May. And then we were going to finish it when I went down to Florida in August. And instead of starting it in May and finishing in August, we finished 3 books by the beginning of July. So it kind of went really fast.
That does sound like a fast turnaround. I mean, I'm still working on a project right now that I only started like a month ago. But you guys talked about how you were brought together on the same concept, but what made you decide to work together?
I've co-written a lot of books with a lot of different authors that I liked their style and stuff. And Tom had put out a couple of books that I really liked, and I liked his writing style. And I knew that he read the same books that I read. He's a huge fan of thriller books like I am. So when he threw up there, I wanted to write a heist book, I knew he would be able to do it, and I wanted to do it. I knew I would be able to. So it was kind of really not a lot of thought into can or can't we do this. I knew we could do it, and I knew working together we would push the other person to write a really good book. So that was kind of the start of it. And as we're both pantsers, so it was literally, Tom, this is your idea, this is your product, write the first chapter, and then I'll write the second chapter, and we'll just kind of go from there and play off of each other. And there's sometimes where one of us wrote 2 chapters in a row, and we really didn't talk about it. We really didn't talk about an ending. We really didn't talk about the characters, nothing. We just kind of created characters as we went along, and then we got to a point towards the end. We were like, all right, this is how we know we're doing a trilogy. This is how this book has to end, to lead into the second book, and then to lead into the third book. So it really, the whole thing happened really organically.
Yeah, I had never written with anyone else before, and it was interesting to get that flow down where we were just basically trading chapters back and forth. you know, putting curveballs into the book, and then you get a text. I get a text from Armand. I'm like, I can't believe you did that. and same thing with him doing it to me. But what's interesting actually is because of his, obviously far vaster experience than mine. There were moments, even though we were pantsing, there were moments where he's like, all right, we're about a third of the way through. We need to move off of character introductions and into this. And then, okay, we're about 2/3 of the way through. It's time to move into this section, which is something I never really thought of before writing on my own.
I myself have tried writing with a co-author. The problem is I ran into the issue of he wanted me to write everything and then he would make adjustments later on, and it just didn't work out. It sounds like you guys had a better system in place for actually working off of each other.
Yeah, we literally wrote the books together. We didn't, you write it and I'll edit it or anything like that. I'm not a big fan of working like that. I think should be a 50-50 as we work. And because I've written so many books in my career, I knew it's a thriller. I knew we were going to do 63,000 words. That's the sweet spot. Mm. So I knew once you hit around that 20,000 word mark, we should be wrapping up the first act, and then into 40,000 is the second act, and then wrap it up for the rest of the book. So I knew kind of where we were going in that respect, and and I was aware the whole time we're writing of, all right, let's stop adding new characters. Let's start, things have to happen. We're writing a thriller, so somebody has to die, somebody has to be threatened, there has to be a chase, there has to be something big to end that first act and then to end that second act. And that's kind of how we played it, which I think we did all three books. I think we did really well with the pacing of the story. And the beta readers loved it. When the initial readers read it, they loved the pacing. That was one of the things that the feedback that I got was that we did really good, and also that they couldn't figure out who had written what chapter, which was really good too.
Yeah, we both. That's another thing too, is that I guess we both enjoy talking about food quite a lot, and we both also still have like a 12-year-old sense of humor. So this is stuff we threw in kind of matched that way. Yeah, I didn't really, even going and reading back, I can't really remember where it went, me, you, me, you, me, you, me, and then we kind of did two, it did really, it meshed really well, I think.
We were also, what was good is we wrote it, we're writing it live on Google Docs. So, so we were basically both looking at the same thing. So when Tom was in and he would go, hey, all right, my chapter's finished, I would go in and read his, but I would also edit his, and nothing major, just typos or different things. And then he would do the same for me. So we were getting some of that initial edit kind of through, which was nice. And there was maybe one or two times where it was like, hey, let's do this, or hey, what are you planning? Like the thing we're working on now, it was, hey, you created this character, what are you planning to do with her? And I'm like, I have no idea, nothing. And he's like, all right, I have an idea for her. Okay, we'll run with it. And we did that with a lot of the characters. It wasn't like, okay, Tom created these characters, so I can't touch them, and I created these characters. Everybody in there is fair game for either of us to write. And we understood, I think what the good part is, we understood who the characters were. So there was none of them were doing something really, really weird or different than that. And I was excited to read. A lot of times Tom is in there writing live and I'm also lurking and reading as he's writing letter by letter, and going along, which is neat because he would get to the end and he would text me and say chapter done. I'd say I know, and I would immediately jump into the next one. You know.
Yeah, I think that was it. That's something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about who write together, is that we also did have a conversation, not specifically about the books themselves, but that these characters, whether, you know, I come up with one or you come up with one, they're all fair game for both of us if we want to write or include them in something on our own in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's good to clarify those type of I don't know if you'd call them IP type stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
to have that conversation up front, because I'm sure there's, well, I know there, I won't name names, but there are, you know, there's authors who've written many books together, and their entire relationship has fallen apart over little stuff like that.
Yeah. The time that I tried working with someone, it ended over because he wanted to work on his projects alone, and something personal had happened between the two of us that just could not be amended. So it's always amazing to see other authors actually be able to work with one another, um, without having issues. It's, for me, it just doesn't seem possible sometimes.
It doesn't always happen.
Mhm.
I've written with a couple of people that I will never work with again. And I've written with people that I would love to write 100 stories with.
Mhm.
So it really, for me, there's kind of the first rule is, okay, Tom, it's your idea, so you're the lead. You write the first chapter, you write the last chapter, and if anything goes astray, or if you don't like the way this is going, then speak up. You
Mhm.
know, I have an ego, but I don't have an ego where, you know, every word I write is gold, because
Right.
I want to make money too, and I want to tell a great story. So I think that's, you know, we kind of set a couple of little ground rules. You know, it was, this is not our priority. So when you get to it, you get to it. I'm not going to bust your chops because you haven't written in 2 or 3 days, because life gets in the way, because, you know, people have wives and girlfriends and jobs and kids and all this other stuff that you don't want to go, okay, well, I wrote my chapter today, so that means tonight when you get home from work you have to write your chapter. We never did any of that. There was no push, but we both took this as a priority because we were excited for the project. And I
Mhm.
think that was the thing. There was never a serious, hey, where's my chapter, you know, I want to write. And so the second book we wrote, the 63,000 words, we wrote it in 14 days.
Wow.
We were just on. I mean, we were just like, in the morning, like, Tom, boom, my chapter's done. By lunchtime, boom, my chapter's done. By dinner time, Tom's like, my chapter's done. And then I'm like, you know, I'm staying up and I'm writing my next chapter because I wanted Tom to get in there at 5 a.m. the next morning and jump. So we blew through. There was a weekend where, I mean, we probably did like 20,000 words, just back and forth, which was awesome. And it wasn't. I didn't feel like we were pushing it. I didn't feel
Mhm.
like Tom was pushing me. I felt like I was pushing me because I was enjoying the story, and I wanted to see what happened next.
Yeah, that guy, that weekend was it was a good weekend. I think it was the first weekend we started writing the book two,
Yeah.
and we just kept. I mean, at any point in time, I could have just been like, you know what, I'm going to go watch some Expedition X or something for five
Like,
hours.
we're gonna throw in some pizza.
Um, yeah, some pizza rolls, watch some of that. But we kept going, not at, like you said, not at anything other than we were enjoying writing the story, and you know what was going to happen next, especially with some of those characters in book two. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it was fun, and it was surprisingly, I don't think there was a moment where either one of us felt that, okay, I'm stuck. I don't know where to go from here. It was all just natural.
So, what can you tell me about this series that, without going into spoilers?
So Johnny Bell is our main character, and it opens with him coming out of prison. He's not a great thief.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been popped and he's coming out of prison, but he immediately wants to go back to the life. And so he has this big idea, and he wants to, get the band back together, type of thing. The people that he hasn't been around in 10 years or whatever it is, and he wants to start another heist. And there are a lot of differing opinions with the people around. I think the best part of this series is all the characters are very unique.
Mm-hmm.
And very different. They all have their own angle and their own motivation, which I think is great. Which is that for me, there's no filler character. There's no like, oh, let's just throw in a random person to have a conversation with. No, everybody has a big part within each book, and then for the entire series. So I think that was a big thing. And then understanding as we're writing each book that there was a certain way we were writing each book. I think that was important as well, as the characters progressed or regressed in certain instances.
Yeah, I think that it turned into, especially with book 2, and I don't think this is really giving anything away, but it became not only just a book about a bunch of small town criminals trying to rip somebody off, but it became about their life and how they navigate during certain relationships and things like that, as opposed to just a straight up smash and grab type of story.
It kind of sounds like it's inspired by Ocean's 11 in a sense.
I can see that in terms of the cast of characters and the amount of characters in it. It's definitely not as glitzy and show offy as those movies.
There's no Brad Pitt in this group. There's no George Clooney in this group. And these are not they're not dumb people, but they're not super sophisticated, where they're going to do like the Mission Impossible Tom Cruise hanging from a thin wire down, or that type of thing. They're just regular people who make really poor choices. There's no hero in this group. They're all likable characters, but likable to read, not likable like you'd want to hang out with or you'd want to be related to.
Right.
Yeah, there is a lot of there's also a lot of it's not just action dialogue. There's you get inside their heads, you read about how they think, how certain situations make them feel, and I think that helped us also write, because that now okay, I'm going to write this next chapter with this character dealing with this character, and you already kind of know that person's head and how that person might react, depending on what comes up when you're writing.
So I take it the book is more semi-omnipotent, or is it fully omniscient?
We're diving. So the fun part is, there's no outline. So Tom would write a book in one character's point of view, and that next chapter didn't have to be that character or the character they were maybe dealing with. Right. I'm jumping into the head of a completely different character or creating a brand new character as we go along, and adding to the story that way. So there's no set, it's all, we're in that, you have that definitive point of view for each chapter, but for the reader, you might be in Johnny's head for a chapter, or maybe even 2 chapters, but then you might not be in Johnny's head for the next 4 to 5 chapters, because there's so many other characters that we're dealing with and stuff. You'll have Johnny in those chapters, but from another person's point of view. So what Johnny's thinking isn't necessarily what the other character is thinking. The way he's doing things, he might think, I'm brilliant, I'm doing this, and we're going to be, millionaires. And then this 2 chapters later, somebody's like, I can't believe he's doing it this way. We're all going to prison, and I think that was a lot of fun too, because there's every one of these characters is, again, they all have their own agenda, and it doesn't magically mesh together that they're all on the same page and they all think, here's the plan, and this is what, bang bang bang, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to walk through, and we're going to make all this money, and it's going to be easy. And again, Brad Pitt and George Clooney are going to be wearing $1,000 suits and saying all these funny cool lines to people, and all these hot chicks are going to love them. There's none of that. It's normal stupid people doing stupid things.
Yeah, even the people on the supposedly good side of the law are still doing stupid things.
Mm-hmm. See, I ran into a problem with my works. One work I have is each section is from a different character's point of view, whereas you guys are doing whole chapters. In the current work I'm doing now, it jumps from character to character within the same chapter, within the same segment. How do you compartmentalize everything to write a good book that way?
I think so what's good is when we started it, we kind of came to the chapter lengths had to be relatively the same, in writing it in Google Doc, get to that 3rd page of a chapter, which is not a long chapter at all. We're not doing 5,000 word chapters here. We're doing like 1,100, 1,200 word chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's bang, bang, bang. You're in that character's head, but you only have that 2.5 pages to stay in that person's head to tell this part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the writing advice of Chuck Palahniuk. His thing is a 50 chapter book should be 50 short stories that are linked. So you got to have something, even if it's something as simple as, and again, me and Tom love writing about food. If it's the character starts and they're like, man, I wish we had pizza rolls. And we have this whole big gunfight or something happens. And the end of that chapter, when you hit that page 3, the guy is bleeding to death and the oven goes off and he opens the oven and he pulls out his pizza rolls. He's like, if I'm going to die eating my pizza rolls. And it's a short story. It's that kind of thing. And it makes the reader want to know what's happening next. A lot of chapters will end on that cliffhanger of, somebody pulls a gun on you or whatever. And so you want to keep reading, but you want to make it where each chapter is its own little thing. And I think me and Tom really, consciously or unconsciously know how to do that. We know how to write those stories within the bigger story. Every character has a character arc, but you got to get there doing those little steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and if you're going to go head bouncing, I think it's better to do it that way as opposed to having much longer chapters and then you just do breaks throughout the chapter. But that's just a personal opinion. I mean, I've read books that I love that bounce through 4 or 5 people's different heads in a single chapter. So it's just how I prefer to write. is switching it up that way.
Yeah, I seem to run into a problem right now with my current novel. Is I got the short stories. It's just having to bounce from character to character and how they're reacting at that given time, or maybe what's so important about this character, and then why are we moving to another character.
Yeah, I think as writers, we have to write the story we want to write, but you also have to keep the reader in mind. Sometimes you write, especially that first draft, and you're off in the weeds, telling this great story about something or other, and it really doesn't move the story along.
Mhm.
It might be that germ of an idea that started you, on this story, and you're like, I can't wait to get to this part. I can't wait to write this scene, and you realize that scene shouldn't even be in the book, or
Mhm.
the character shouldn't act this way because you've written 10,000 words ahead of time that points this person in a different direction. So I think we the cliche is we write the stories we want to read,
Right.
but you also got to write a story that more than just you want to read the story.
Mhm.
And me and Tom, you know, cut our reading teeth on a lot of the same thrillers growing up. We're both huge Dean Koontz fans. So his pacing and all that stuff from reading 30, 40 years of his work, for me, it really shows. It shows me the template of how we're supposed to do this. And Tom. I mean, this was never a conversation. This was never a, hey, let's do 2.5 pages a chapter and let's just stay in one. That was never a thing because we've read a ton of the same stuff. I mean, we always trade ideas for book. Hey, I just read Jordan Harper. You got to read this. I just read, the new S.A. Cosby. You got to read it. So we like the same stuff, and we like the style of those writers, and that's what we want to also write.
Yeah, shorter punchy chapters, and also that was a good point. Is that if you're writing something, you could be writing a great scene, a great chapter,
Mhm.
but you come to the end of it and you look back on it and you're like, if I wrote this entire book, could I take this chapter out and the book would still be fine? And
Mhm.
if the answer is yes, you should probably take the chapter out because it's just filler.
I I I'm the kind of person I don't like putting filler in my book. I get to the point and what's important to the story. If it doesn't need to belong there, I don't write it.
And that's the way to go. I think a lot of people do it. I think a lot of people are looking for bulk. They're
Mhm.
looking to write, those 80s Stephen King size books. And so they're just throwing in whatever they can to bulk up the book. And it makes no sense. Bigger isn't always better.
I don't even like purple language in my work. I mean,
Mm.
if it needed purple language, I would add it to an extent. But if it's not important to the story, why even focus on it?
I
Right.
always say I'm
Right.
a pulp fiction writer,
Yeah. And that's,
and I think Tom would agree that he's also a pulp fiction writer. So we want to write a lean, that lean story that people are going to read. We're not giving tons of description on the characters
Mhm.
because we want the reader to do that in your mind's eye, because you probably know a Johnny Bell. You probably know some of these characters that you've met or you have an idea of them. So we want those characters in your head. So, for that ownership for the reader. It
Mhm.
takes me out of a story at times when I get this 4 pages of description on what the character is wearing and everything. And it's not like you need that for the character. I want to figure out this character on my own. And so I do a lot of my characters I create. I know who they look like,
Mhm.
but you a totally different character in your mind, and that's what I want. I don't want you to, it's way different reading a book than watching a TV series or a movie.
Yeah.
You know, you're watching a TV series and it's very passive, and you're enjoying it or you're not. That's it. But with reading, you're creating this TV show, this movie in your head, and you have to create these characters. And I think that's what you can't beat with a good book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that even with us writing, if at some point we sat down and chose celebrities who we thought these characters looked like, I'm sure we might hit on a couple the same, but I'm
Maybe.
sure we both picture them differently.
Yeah.
Even though we're writing them, which I like. So because I don't go. He had a patrician nose and his chin jutted out like
Mm-hmm.
chin man, whatever it is. But it's because it's like, come on.
I mean, I think it's the same with writing scenery.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody knows what a sleazy bar looks like in your mind. You don't need to explain the dartboard is cracked, and you don't need to explain the stains. That's just a given. That's you in your mind's eye when somebody says, "Oh, you know, they walked into a 5-star restaurant." You know what that looks like in your mind. I don't have to describe the chandeliers. I don't have to describe the maitre d'. I don't have to describe any of that stuff if it's not part of the story. If it's something like, okay, yeah, they're going to shoot the chandelier or they're going to hang on the chandelier, then you mention the chandelier. But otherwise, if I say, hey, the characters walked into a sleazy bar or they walk into a strip club, you know what a sleazy strip club looks like.
Yeah.
You know, so you've either been to one on Staten Island many times, or you've seen enough TV shows or movies that you know what they look like.
And I've noticed in a couple of the novels I've read, they go maybe fantasy. You go into detail about those things because not everyone's going to know about them. But when it comes to anything modern, there's no point in actually having to rehash everything about them.
Yeah, unless you're doing it for filler. Unless
Right.
I need a 150,000 word book. So I'm gonna describe, the people walk into a gymnasium. I'm gonna describe the basketball nets. I'm gonna describe the floor, and they use gym seal on the floor and blah blah. I mean, it takes you out of the story. Dean
Mm-hmm.
Koontz is great for adding those things, and he uses a lot of big words,
Mm-hmm.
but not 5 pages of it. He will add you walk in the room and it's a specific carpet and there's a painting by Monet on the wall and whatever, and it sets the room without having to go into all the little minor details of stuff, and it's stuff that has to do usually with the story.
Mm-hmm. But even Michael Crichton, when he wrote Timeline, didn't go into advanced details about um, the area in which the characters ended up in. It wasn't fully necessary.
Right.
No.
Because
I think the most interesting I think the most interesting thing about Michael Crichton's description in Timeline when they went back into the past, and it's something I've always remembered. I haven't read that book in more than 20, maybe 30 years. I don't even know. But he basically said the one thing he said to describe them going back to that time period was it was so silent outside, and none of the characters could figure out why it was so silent, and they realized there were no electrical wires anywhere, and they had no idea that you're just used to that noise, and that's a cool way of describing something.
Yeah.
Not it smelled like horse manure, and there were 500 trees, and Robin Hood and his merry men were bouncing along.
No, you said your books are only about 65,000 words.
63,000 words is the sweet spot for thriller books.
It makes me wonder what the sweet spot for a fantasy isekai would be.
Yeah, I mean, fantasies are usually
I don't know
you're
if you
hitting over
just
100.
sneeze there. Or...
What were you saying, Tom?
Oh, I said I got the fantasy part. I don't know if you sneezed right after you said the word fantasy, or if that was a word that I've never heard that word before.
Isekai is a.
God bless you.
It is a Japanese term for otherworld.
Okay.
It is a
Yeah,
genre.
I mean, I think anything like fantasy, sci-fi, that type of stuff, where you actually do have to describe in detail a lot of things because they don't exist right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're looking at least 100,000, I would think.
Well, that's my book right now is fantasy isekai, but I only go into detail on certain aspects. What is your typical way of building a character within a chapter?
It depends on the character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it depends on what you want to say about this character. So it's easy to just go, oh, this character is a thief.
Mm-hmm.
But it's better to have him, you know, use sleight of hand and pick somebody's pocket, or any of those little tricks that thieves will do. It's better to show that character doing an action rather than somebody going, oh, you're a thief, or the character thinking, well, I'm a thief, so I'm going to steal this car. You know, the better is how easy he breaks into that car and hotwires the car and takes off. I mean, you really want to show the character in as few actions. In normal life, if you look at anybody, you're not going to look at someone and go, oh, that guy is a thief, that guy is this, or that guy's. We're all so very different. But in TV, in movies, in books, in video games, you're not that the characters are one dimensional,
Mm-hmm.
but there has to be that thing about them. There has to be that they're a thief. That, you know, I mean, like, listen, we all know alcoholics.
Yeah.
But that person isn't an alcoholic 24/7. That you know them. So what other things is that person known for? But in a book or in a movie or whatever, that person's going to be drinking constantly the whole thing, because that's the character that you need for that scene or that book or movie or whatever. So for me, it is not just to say the character is a thief, and to show other parts of the character. Nobody likes the villain that is just this evil person, and he's just going around, punching babies and tripping old ladies. I mean, that gets boring really quick. You always remember, in my mind, I always remember the villain thinks he's the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
The villain thinks what he is doing is justified and right, and he is helping himself. Some of these characters that we've written are not necessarily, oh, I just want to get rich. They think they're really doing something that's proper. They're helping their friends out. We all are going to do this, and then there's characters that are like, I'm owed this. I've been screwed so many times in my life. I'm owed this money, and I'm going to go and steal it for myself, and I can justify that. So the important thing is, when we created so many characters, and again, the guys on both sides of the law, you give them something for them to strive for, but also you got to figure out, well, what if they don't get what they want, or what if they get something completely different, or are these people going to quit? Are these people going to go to the end knowing, hey, I might die doing this. So, and again, me and Tom never talked about any of that. It's just building the layers of the character. Every time you get into that character's head, you figure out, you really just figure out who they are. And for me as a reader, I want to know. That's the fun of reading a book and trying to figure out who this person really is. And do I relate to them, or do I just completely think that this person is an idiot or just beyond me?
I mean, to kind of say the same thing, you have every good guy you have in a story, just like in real life, is going to have flaws also. So the interesting part for me as a reader is how this person deals with those flaws, while maintaining, their uh, their job status, or whatever makes them the good guy. And the same thing with bad guys. There's no bad guy. There might be a couple, but there's nobody who's completely bad. And so what's the good? What's the good in them? And that's what makes it interesting, because you're not just dealing with somebody who punches babies. You're dealing with somebody who maybe punches babies, but also has a baby at home that he loves and has to deal with and raise. And so, yeah, I think the key to building the character is you can't have just a one-sided character. You throw something that's completely opposite of what he or she is or is supposed to be in the story, and see where that takes you.
Of course, when it comes to bad guys, one of the most terrifying ones are the ones that you can either sympathize with or agree with.
Yeah, that's a scary person, that you're in that gray area a lot of times with them. It's easier to hate that person and everything that they do, for a bad guy. But when you are agreeing with, maybe not agreeing with the way they're doing it, but you're agreeing with their principles and what they're talking about, that's you get that slippery slope of, maybe they're not the bad guy here. Maybe they're, maybe they have the right thing. They're misguided in what they do.
Right.
Because again, we're dealing in this trilogy, we're dealing with people who want to steal something.
Right.
So you morally, you're not supposed to like these people because they're thieves. But you get to know the characters and you realize that they're not one dimensional. There's feelings and there's love between some of them, and there's hatred also there. And so, all of that, I think, as a reader, you come away and you're like, I understand. I would never do it this way, but I understand why they would do it this way. I mean, think of people, think of friends and family who've made some really dumb, stupid mistakes.
Right.
They're not doing it going, you know what, I'm gonna do this because I'm gonna date this woman who is gonna be awful to me and treat me like crap for the next 5-6 years, and I'm fine with that. You don't ever walk into that relationship like that.
Right.
It gets to that point, and you don't realize that this person is this awful person that screws you for 5 and 6 years. Not that I'm talking about anybody specific, but but you know what I mean. So is she a villain? Is she the bad guy? In my mind, she is. In her husband, who she's married to now, she's probably the greatest person ever. So it's also where you're coming from on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it's good to. It's great when you have somebody who can create a character who people are, for some reason they can't explain, care for, are you know, don't agree with what they're doing, but do agree with they're doing, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I mean, like Breaking Bad, Walter White is not the hero of that show, but people
Right.
think he is. He's actually the villain. He's not a good guy at all, but you know, people just loved him and loved the character, and when bad things happened to him, they felt bad for him, even though he deserved it most of the time.
But then again, when it comes to building those type of characters, we're talking about people that people want to feel something for. They want to what is it I'm looking for here? They can't relate to the character, but they can sympathize with them.
It's like
Right.
watching.
Or
It's like,
empathize.
yeah, it's like watching wrestling.
Hmm.
It's like the old days versus now. The old days was you had a baby face and you had a heel, and 100% he was the good guy, and 100% he was the bad guy. And then you get into Stone Cold Steve Austin and guys like that are the anti-hero, that are the guys giving the boss the finger and drinking beer and cursing and everything else. And you're like, do I like this guy or do I hate this guy? I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I
Hmm.
understand flipping off your boss, but also you're an awful person the way you're acting as well. And I think a lot of people, like you said, you can relate or you don't relate, but you also can empathize
Hmm.
with what they're doing. And again, in their mind, what they're doing is good. It's they're doing, and it's just. And um and that's the thing with like serial killers. I've read and watched so many things over the years since I was a kid, and they all think they were doing the right thing. I mean, they know morally maybe I'm not doing the right thing, but for me this makes sense. For me, these things need to happen, and I can justify it, and that's why I've killed 5, 10, 100 people or whatever. And that's an interesting way, because as a civilized member of society, I'm not going to go, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to kill people,
Hmm.
you know. But for them, they understand that.
Yeah, I think one of the worst rules of thumb that's been put at one of them that's been put out there to writers mainly is you have to make your protagonist likable, and
Hmm.
that's completely the wrong word. Um, they should be relatable in some way, not relatable that oh I've done that too, but you've experienced it. You either watched a true crime documentary, or you have a family member who goes out and gets drunk and gets into bar fights and comes home, and it's a likable is not the right word. I don't know. I would say relatable is a good one. If you can get a reader to empathize, that's always good. But yeah, I mean, some of the best books written. There's a book called Money by Martin Amis, one of my favorite books. It's just a straight up, uh, you know, literature type. No, not really any one genre, and the main character is is god awful. He's like the worst human being in the world. But it's such a but to get into that life and to read about how he thinks and why he acts a certain way, it makes it interesting, and it also focuses on greed, which we all have in one degree or another. So
Hmm.
that's a relatable um, flaw in 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 this guy. So yeah, I I don't think likable is a good word. In fact, I don't know if I enjoy reading too many books where the main character is a likable, fun-going guy. So I
Hmm.
think that's what I got with that.
I think interesting is a good word, whether you agree with that character or
Mm.
you don't. I think as long as there's an interest in knowing what's coming next, for me, then I mean, I especially in television, we watch shows and me and my wife are sitting there and she's like, I hate this character, I hate this actor, but you're still watching because you're interested to know what's coming next, what this person is going to do that is awful. And and on any character you have to relate, unless it's a bad character, like poorly written character, you can figure out your own. That's fun for me, watching shows or reading books and going, what would I do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
What would if I was thrown into this situation, if I was dealing with people like this, what would I do? And I think that's again, it makes it interesting.
Yeah, engaging. That's another good word.
Yeah,
it's because engaging could be good or bad. You're engaged when you're watching a movie that's scaring the crap out of you, and you're engaged with when you're watching, Love Actually or one of those ridiculous movies.
It was like, I haven't been able to read the books yet, but do you have any characters that are in conflict with each other, all because of not differing opinions, but personalities that clash?
oh yeah, I mean, we
Yes.
wrote a trilogy of, it's almost like the heist in all three books is secondary to the interactions of these characters, and it's over a period of time. So we start and he's been in prison for a few years. So when you come out of prison, there's some unresolved issues that he has with certain characters. This was his crew before he went away, and they're out, and he was the one who was popped. So there's a lot of that initial conflict there as well. Of are they happy he's out? Are they mad? Does he he owe him $20? I mean, you get all that as well, and then it gets ramped up as there are problems within the cliques of the characters. Who's working with who is confidant with this one, and then how does that change as perceptions change, as as everything changes. I don't want to get into specific things, spoilers in the book, but there's a lot of character development as pertains to other characters. And when you're dealing with like a dozen characters that are all with unique voices, I think we were very careful not to just kind of streamline anybody and just, nobody's just going to roll over and do what everybody else wants unless it benefits them. In their mind, okay, everybody wants to do this. I think it's a bad idea, but you know what? I'm getting something out of this at the end, so I'm going to go with it. And I think that was important. And it was interesting because, again, there's two different people getting in the heads of all of these dozen characters. And so I know where this character is, and then Tom writes a chapter with in this character's head, and I'm like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see that we're moving in that direction. This is cool. So the next time I write this character, if I pick up this character again, then where can I go with this? So it still makes sense. It's still within that framework that we're writing along, and it's great as a reader, and it's great as the challenge of, wow, this guy is really effed up. I can't believe he just did this to someone who's his friend. So how do we work? And then it's also, as a writer, do we write from his point of view that he just screwed somebody over, or do we write from the point of view of the person that just got screwed over? Or do we write from a third person who's watching this happen? So it was real interesting to be able to do that, and I think both of us were able to do that really well. And not just go, well, let's just get back into this character's head. No, we were taking it in other directions. And again, it all has to move the story along.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I think it helps too, that we weren't each focused on specific characters. You know, it was like, you only write these people, I only write these people, because we're all individuals, but depending on the time of day, depending on, you know, some email you read, depending on if you stub your foot on the couch, we change personalities throughout the day too.
Mhm.
And we can act out of character quite a bit. So to have two people writing the same character, it gives it that nuance, because, you know, maybe there's something I'm thinking of, which, you know what I'm talking about, Armand, but I'm not going to say it. You know, maybe something's going on, so you, you know, you have a character do something out of out of place, or you're having a great day, and usually this grumpy mean guy who likes to beat the crap out of people is suddenly, you know, doing something nice. So it helps because, you know, we all have our different moods, and I think that winds up showing up when we write in the character.
Now, for the audience at home, would you care to name the trilogy for everyone?
So it's the Johnny.
It's called what? Oh, it's a Johnny Bell heist trilogy. Is that what I put it as?
Yeah, I think so.
Johnny Bell heist series.
Yeah.
The first book. So we this was Armand's idea, not mine. We took since his name was Johnny Bell, we decided to focus the word Bell on the titles. So first one is Rock the Bells. Book 2 is Hell's Bells. Book 3, which will be out on the 15th of this month, February, is For Whom the Bell Tolls. So we have that ongoing through line, and each three are titles to some pretty good songs.
Okay. As our conversation winds down, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests, Armand Rosamilia and Thomas Duffy, for sharing their insights and experiences with us today. For our listeners, if you've been inspired by the world of authors or are curious about breaking into the film industry, be sure to tune in each month. We bring you engaging interviews with industry professionals, providing valuable insights into their professions. Who knows, maybe one day you'll join us on the podcast. Until then, stay tuned for more captivating conversations, and thank you for being a part of LPA Presents community.